The black marble of Volterra's hallways reflected the flickering torchlight with a ghostly glow. Isabella Vulturi walked with the elegance and determination of a shadow, her cloak billowing behind her. Since she could remember, Volterra had been both her home and her prison. Raised within the most powerful vampire clan in the world, she knew no life other than obedience and the absolute supremacy of the Volturi. Her footsteps echoed in the silence of the Grand Fortress, a timeless castle where every corner whispered of centuries of absolute power. Aro had taken her under his wing when she was just a child. Her parents, descendants of an ancient bloodline and allies of the Volturi, had been betrayed and destroyed in an internal revolt that nearly shook the clan's foundation. Aro saw in her a unique potential, something he could not afford to waste. So he raised her as his protege, his future heir. She was educated in strategy, manipulation, and combat. She was taught to read people without the need for supernatural abilities, to detect lies with a single glance, and to wield power with the precision of a scalpel. But Bella was not like Jane or Alec. They were soldiers, unwaveringly devoted, natural-born assassins with no will of their own beyond serving. In her, Aro saw something more than a mere soldier or a cog in his machine. He saw power. A power that could change the course of history if used correctly. She did not have Jane's offensive abilities, who could burn any vampire in unimaginable torment, nor Alec's sensory deprivation, which rendered his victims insensible and helpless. But Bella possessed something far more terrifying. She could neutralize the abilities of others just by being near. She became the only being in the world Aro could not read, the only one Jane could not torture, and the only one whose presence rendered the gifts that instilled such fear in the vampire world useless. Aro observed her for years, waiting, calculating. He believed he could mold her into his most lethal weapon, but with each passing day, every small spark of defiance she showed, he began to doubt. He knew her loyalty had to be forged with patience, and for a time, he believed he had succeeded. Bella followed orders, executed missions with surgical precision, and remained impassive as death sentences were carried out before her. She knew no other life. She had no other choice, until Forks. When she was tasked with watching the Cullens, she did so with skepticism. She knew Aro saw them as an anomaly, an aberration in the natural order of vampires. They did not hunt humans. They lived as a family. They protected humans instead of seeing them as prey. It was absurd. But when Bella arrived in Forks and met Edward Cullen, the world she had known for centuries began to crumble. Edward was different from any vampire she had encountered. He lacked the coldness of the Volturi or the hunger of nomads. His golden eyes held no cruelty, no indifference she had grown accustomed to. And most strangely of all, when he tried to read her mind, he failed. He was used to having access to everyone's thoughts, to being a spectator of every mind. But with Bella, his gift was useless. That initial fascination turned into something more when she realized that Edward did not look at her the way the Volturi did. He did not see her as a weapon, as a piece of power, but as a person. He spoke to her of his family, of the possibility of choice, of the idea that her fate was not sealed simply because she had been born into Volterra. For the first time, Bella felt something she had never felt before: hope. But Aro knew. He always knew. When Bella returned to Volterra, she was met with closed doors and cold stares. Aro awaited her in the grand throne room, his expression unreadable. Jane watched her with pure hatred. Alec, as always, was merely a shadow at her side. Bella felt the weight of the trap closing around her. "Dear Isabella," Aro said in that honeyed voice that hid venom behind every word, "I have heard of your fascination with the Cullens." Bella did not respond. She knew that any word she spoke would be used against her. Aro smiled, stepping forward. "Tell me, have they made you believe there is another path? That you can escape what you are?" Jane smirked cruelly. "There is no escape," she whispered. "There never was." Aro extended his hand toward Bella, as he always did, expecting to touch her skin and extract every one of her thoughts. But he could not. He could not see her. He could not control her. And Bella saw something in his eyes she had never seen before: fear. The war did not begin with swords or fire. It began with a deadly silence as Bella straightened and held Aro's gaze without flinching. "There is no escape for any of us," she whispered. What followed was a game of deadly chess. Bella feigned loyalty, regaining Aro's trust while weaving her own network of allies in the shadows. Some lower guards began to question their loyalty. Whispers traveled the hallways. Bella played her role with precision, but Aro was not a fool. He knew the young woman was on the edge of betrayal, so he set the cruelest trap imaginable. Edward was captured. When Bella entered the grand throne room and saw Edward on his knees, his clothes torn and his skin marked by battle, something inside her shattered. She knew what Aro wanted. She knew he was testing her. Aro handed her a dagger of obsidian, an ancient relic infused with venom lethal to vampires. "Prove your loyalty, Isabella." Silence fell over the room. Edward did not look away from Bella. There was no fear in his eyes, only trust. And in that moment, she knew her fate did not lie in Volterra. With a fluid motion, Bella hurled the dagger. Not at Edward, at Aro. The blade sliced through the air. Aro barely had time to evade it before Bella unleashed all her power. An invisible wave swept through the room. Jane collapsed with a scream. Alec fell to his knees. The guards froze. Their gifts had vanished. "Now!" Bella shouted, and at that moment, the doors burst open. The Cullens stormed into the room like a hurricane. Alice, Jasper, Emmett, Carlisle. Chaos erupted. Battles broke out across the chamber, vampires clashing against vampires. The sound of stone shattering, war cries, the fall of a dynasty. Bella lunged at Aro with ferocious speed. Her hands closed around his throat. "Your reign ends here," she whispered. Volterra would not be remembered as the cradle of absolute power. It would be remembered as the place where vampire royalty fell. Because the true queen of Volterra had never been Aro. It had always been Isabella.